Hello and a very warm welcome to Science Monitor. I am Smriti Rastogi. In today's special edition, we will talk about the impact of pandemic on the emotional and mental well-being of a person. COVID-19 has led to very unforeseen circumstances. We are in a lockdown, we have to stay at home. We have to maintain social distance, and along with that, the impact of the pandemic is increasing all over the world. No wonder people are living in fear, confusion, and anxiety. Yet, it is essential to maintain our psychological well-being in these times. So, how does one tackle with a situation like this? To get some professional and scientific advice on this, we have with us today a very renowned psychiatrist and a public health professional, Dr. Nimesh G. Desai. Sir, a very warm welcome to our program. You are familiar with the current situation in the country because of the pandemic. People are confused, they feel cornered, and some also experience anxiety and fear. So how does one really cope with a situation like this?
Does one cope with this situation? How do groups cope with this situation? How does the human society cope with this situation, if I might paraphrase the question? And the first point to realize is that no generation in the current existing human globe has ever been through such an experience. The last possible major event was World War II. You have had major natural disasters affecting large communities, you have had ethnic conflicts, you have had a variety of situations, but nothing of this kind. And so except for the books and the science, for all of us, this is a first-time experience. Yeah. Having said that, what we do know from science, and certainly this kind of situations all the more, is that this is a highly abnormal situation, as I highlighted, and so almost every reaction be considered as normal. I would indeed go so far as to say that, as we keep saying in psychiatry and mental health circles, during large natural disasters or such pandemics, the very definition of being normal or abnormal must shift immensely. We're very fond of saying that every reaction that you or I see is essentially a normal reaction to a very abnormal situation. And that's important to realize for us, first of all, psychiatrists and mental health professionals, so that we don't start labeling people with psychiatric disorders and start medicating unnecessarily. Yeah. For our health professionals to recognize that do refer to specialists when required, but otherwise deal with it at your level, primary care physician, counselors. For the general population to realize that if any one of us notices any reaction which might be seen abnormal in usual circumstances, anger, excessive anxiety, sleeplessness, fear of something, that need not be seen as abnormal. Be quite taken in stride as a normal reaction. The difficulty then arises during a highly abnormal situation. How do you differentiate normal and abnormal?
Dr. Desai, we are seeing a sort of global lockdown where people are not stepping out of their homes until and unless it is very necessary. And people are talking about lockdown loneliness. What are the symptoms of the lockdown loneliness and how does it manifest itself?
Almost all of that will apply to the effects of global lockdown. Without repeating, to say that all of the reactions be considered normal. Nobody has been through this in last 70 years, The thing to understand is that there are people who will be more vulnerable amongst us. The elderly, children, pregnant and lactating women, people with disability, physical or psychosocial, in the social ladder, the socially disadvantaged populations. And so within a family or a neighborhood setting, some vulnerable groups. At the social order level, some more vulnerable marginalized groups. Those are the people who should be attended to first. And the biggest thing I believe should work is that not only is it a social responsibility to maintain the discipline and isolation as required, but channelize the loneliness, if there is, through creative and constructive work to help others. In the family, in the neighborhood, in the society. I must say, I am very acutely aware from whatever little one knows in history, and like we said, last 20 years we have worked on many disaster and conflict situations. Unlike almost any other situation now, the connectedness in the virtual world is actually very good. And so are transactions possible. Social, economic, And so really, I think there is not only one, but there are huge blessings in this otherwise bleak world.
Dr. Desai, despite all the virtual facilitations that we have, like social media and various other platforms, still the situation like COVID-19 is leading to some kind of social disorder as well, isn't it?
Sure it is. The social disorder, the manifestation of psychiatric disorders now and will happen later.
So you mean to say that mental disorder could increase in the coming days?
Yes. The first thing that science knows, again through work in India and other countries, is that in these periods, people who have been on long-term treatment for psychiatric or neurological brain or mind-related problems, they recur or relapse. Now, there are two major reasons for this. One is the direct impact of whatever is the situation, the disaster or the conflict or the lockdown. The second is the discontinuity in treatment. And so like we are trying at this hospital, and I'm sure many other hospitals and private agencies are trying, and individuals, provide continuity of care those who are already on treatment. Because the biggest number is people who relapse and recur. The second is those who are vulnerable psychologically or in terms of social order. The third is then people who have to undergo, even amongst all of us, high amount of stress. For example, the essential service providers, doctors, health professionals, firemen, policemen, and the other services.
So you mean to say that people may not speak about it, but caregivers also need care?
The concept of care for the carers is a relatively recent one, and yet mostly in books and seminars and monographs, not very uniformly implemented. But I must say here that I think our country and the world is kind of waking up to this. For example, I'm given to understand by the Indian Medical Association, the national IMA body, that they have been in touch with the PMO and now with the UN agency to see that with us, with IBA's help, we can actually launch a helpline support and counseling service for doctors and health professionals who are working with COVID patients. Okay. Now, this a few years ago in any crisis would have been almost unthinkable, that within a week of the crisis really taking the shape, we are actually thinking of having a helpline, which is a huge need, So care for the carers is certainly a good idea. But to go back to what we were saying, surely obsessive or phobic disorders or anxiety disorders are likely to increase in the society now and in the future. One thing to clarify here is that what's almost become synonymous with the idea of trauma, any kind, or sine qua non, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, actually doesn't happen in our cultures as much as it does in the American cultures. The American and the European culture, particularly the American culture, have their own weaknesses. Add to that the socio-political, economic angles of the concept of PTSD, not to get into those details. But through our own research funded by ICMR and WHO and many other agencies, it's now been, I think, conclusively proven that Indian and South Asian populations do not have PTSD anywhere near as frequently as the Western world does. Even in a small number that PTSD does happen after a few months, it abates quickly, it abates easier, and doesn't leave too many marks. So I really would urge all our viewers to revisit this whole myth about PTSD being the sine qua non of any trauma. There are indeed, like you have been wanting to highlight, acute problems of anxiety, fear, increase of psychiatric disorders, and to add what's called acute stress disorder.
All right, but there is also a feeling that one should cut back on news, one should avoid platforms like social media. In fact, we have heard advices from the health professionals that do not watch too much news as it raises the anxiety level. So what should the people do? Because when you are sitting behind the closed doors of your homes, what should they be doing then?
So let's pause and ask ourselves, what is one of the commonest laments that almost anyone in the 21st century expresses? I don't get me time. I don't get time at home. I don't get time with the family. I don't get to do things that I want to do. Now, my simple message is, with all humility and ladies and gentlemen, this is the time to do all that you have said you wanted to do. Within the limitations of the lockdown, of course, but it's not so impossible. Intellectual creativity, writing, reading, other creative arts, sitting at home, spend time with family. So I really do think that without being unfair to people, if we can only channelize our ideas a little better, this human tendency of lamenting what you don't have will be lesser. See, when you're very busy with work, you keep lamenting, you don't get time. Now, when you get time, the lament is, I don't have work. It should be possible.
And Dr. Desai, how should one feel positive about social distancing and lockdown?
Infectious epidemics like this and pandemics like this, there's also a huge social responsibility. So by permitting myself the lockdown, I'm not only perhaps saving myself, safeguarding myself, but I'm also executing a huge social responsibility. And that we need to realize. You will know better, I have some idea, and maybe we can talk about that. Does the average Indian psyche or do average Indian group of masses follow the idea of, as you were saying, social distancing adequately? Or is it only in some classes and elsewhere it's kind of being violated? Because, as I suspect, if it does not get followed too well, the future can be very bleak.
All right, Dr. Desai, so we need to follow it with conviction and confidence. We'll continue our talk with Dr. Desai, but now it is time for a quick break, so stay tuned to Rajya Sabha Television.
भैया सुनना बहना सुनना संयम और सावधानी बरतना सकल समाज को प्रेरित कर संकल्प कोरोना से लड़ना ये फैली एक बीमारी है पर नहीं कोई लाचारी है भयभीत नहीं होना इसे अफवाहों से बच के रहना जो आए विदेशी मेहमान उन पर रखना है ज्यादा ध्यान संक्रमित क्रमित नित बढ़ता ये हर पल एहतियात का रखो ध्यान धुलना है बारंबार हाथ सैनिटाइजर रखो साथ गर्मा कर पानी को पीना तुम कपड़ों को भी रखना साफ खांसी हो या सर्दी जुकाम लक्षण भी हैं इसके तमाम मेडिकल जांच करा कर तुम औरों की बचा लो जान जहां भीड़ भरे चौराहे हो मंडी बाजार दोराहे हो उस जगह पे जाने से बचना और हाथ मिलाने से डरना कोई भी ताना बाना हो यदि गैर जरूरी जाना हो मंदिर मस्जिद गुरुद्वारे का भी घर में ही दर्शन करना जन को बतलाना है जनता कर्फ्यू अपनाना है कर्फ्यू में घर पे ही रहकर भारत को जिताना है भारत को जिताना है ये देश हमारा अपना है 125 करोड़ का सपना है मिलकर लड़ना दृढ़ निश्चय है तो कोरोना की हार भी तय है तो कोरोना की हार भी तय है तो कोरोना की हार भी तय है
Welcome back to Science Monitor. In today's special edition, we have a very special guest with us, Dr. Nimesh G. Desai, Director of Institute of Human Behavior and Allied Sciences, Delhi. And we are talking to him on the impact of pandemic on our mental well-being. So, Dr. Desai, before the break, we talked about social distancing. So, it is a very new concept for our country. In Western countries, we have seen people talking about it. But how do you translate this concept in Indian context? What should we try to understand by it?
Sure. I would think that culturally, if you examine the idea of social distancing as it emerged in the current pandemic, it came mainly from the Western and the Christian tradition of where the physical distance was already being maintained in routine day-to-day life. And so, to re-emphasize that physical distancing was the idea of social distancing. For that reason and for the emotional reasons, for Indian or South Asian cultures, the idea of social distancing, if you transliterate, will not work very well. All that we need to perhaps emphasize for India is physical distancing. And all that we are talking about in prevention of the transmission of the virus is physical distancing. In fact, I would take that a step further to say physical or social distancing, in inverted commas, need not lead to emotional or psychological distancing at all. And to keep repeating myself, I really think that the social media, whatever its double-edged sword arguments, has been a huge boon in the current time. I mean, imagine this pandemic having occurred 30 or 40 years ago without the net or the social media or the Netflix. And so the way to maintain the emotional connectedness and the psychological connectedness is through a lot of means. It should be possible.
So, Dr. Desai, do you feel that the essential needs of the general people are being met in the current scenario?
The economic assistance, I must say, is a huge matter. Maslow's hierarchy of needs clearly would say that normal human existence, and certainly in such difficult situations, the first and the second level needs are physical safety, physiological needs of sleep and hunger, food and clothes. Next is the level of belongingness and doing something for the others, and then understanding oneself better, helping the society. So what happens in disaster and conflict situations is that the insecurity about the first two levels, safety and hunger and sleep, take precedence for the affected population. So the government and the non-governmental agencies, what it can do well is in the first few weeks, first few days, make sure that's taken care of at least for majority of the people. Surely, possibly there will be pockets where people are not covered. But this is a huge reassurance that now we have the social responsibility to channelize towards constructive outlets. I mean, indeed, I would think that you should see a lot more of creativity in the next few years. And I keep expecting next 5 or 10 years, Filmfare Award winners and the Pulitzer Prize Award winners and writers to say, I got this idea during the COVID.
So it can be one of the positive outcomes, sir. What do you think the impact will be on different levels, like the rural and the urban levels? Will it manifest differently in terms of mental well-being?
Urban poor and the lower strata, socioeconomic, so to say, will be much more affected. What would be most affected, and I won't spend too much time on it, but groups that, as you know, we work a lot with, the homeless populations. See, people in slums, and much worse is the group of homeless populations in the urban areas. Because there, even the physical first level needs are not met with. And so, the psychological reactions can become that much worse.
Absolutely, Dr. Desai. So now it is time for another quick break. Stay tuned as we'll talk about the other aspects of mental well-being in the times of pandemic when we return.
If you are a parent, chances are you're worried and have questions about just how contagious coronavirus is and whether your child could be at risk. Misinformation has cropped up across the internet since coronavirus, or COVID-19 as it's now called, began spreading. So we asked UNICEF's health experts to get us the facts. Here are 6 things they think you should know. The virus is transmitted through direct contact with respiratory droplets from an infected person and by touching surfaces that are contaminated. Tell your children to maintain at least 3 feet of distance between themselves and people who are coughing, sneezing, and have a fever. Symptoms of coronavirus can include fever, cough, and shortness of breath. In more severe cases, infection can cause pneumonia or breathing difficulties. More rarely, the disease can be fatal, but that's mainly among older people with pre-existing conditions. Wash your hands frequently for at least 20 seconds using soap and water or an alcohol-based hand rub. Cover your mouth and nose when coughing or sneezing. Use your elbow, like this, or use a tissue and then throw it in the bin immediately after. Not really. If you don't have any symptoms, there is no need to wear a mask. Hand washing is actually more important. If you're coughing or sneezing, it's advised that you wear a medical mask. to help protect others. For now, there isn't enough evidence to support whether the virus is transmitted from a mother to her baby during pregnancy or what impact this might have on the baby. To date, there is no specific medicine to prevent or treat the new coronavirus. So the best thing you can do is practice basic hygiene. To learn more, follow UNICEF and the World Health Organization for the latest updates. And if you found this video helpful, pass it along to your family and friends.
Welcome back to Science Monitor. In today's special edition, we have a very special guest with us, Dr. Nimesh G. Desai, Director of Institute of Human Behavior and Allied Sciences, Delhi. And we are talking to him on the impact of pandemic on the emotional and mental well-being of an individual and also of the society. Dr. Desai, amidst the lockdown, people also complain about unwanted or inappropriate behavior. Like you haven't stepped out of your house and one day when you step out to fetch the essential commodities, the police stops you, starts intruding, starts questioning. Some people feel humiliated, some feel a little insecure. Though all this is also new for the police, so we can't also blame them. What do you have to say about it?
It's a difficult, thankless task for all the essential service providers at this point of time. Doctors and other healthcare professionals, police and law enforcement, and every other group. That thin line between an individual or a society's behavior to be maintained between what I refer to as the thin line between bravery and foolhardiness. Now, that's always very thin. In this period, it becomes much more thin. Now, how do I enforce that on 10 or 20 or 50 or 1,000 other people?
So as we all know that the doctors are working on the front line, but they do not have enough of the personal protective equipment. Though the government has done its bit, a 15,000 crore package has been announced where they are going to include ICU, ventilators and a whole lot of things. But till the time these things trickle down in the hands of hospital authorities, in the hands of doctors, are there any kind of safe alternatives which the healthcare professionals can adopt and it can better their mental well-being?
See, no argument unless the situation really becomes, God forbid, really bad in the next few weeks and months. So that extreme end of the spectrum, there has to be non-negotiable nature of it. All personal protective equipment, all precautions must be in place, sure. The middle of the spectrum, where any one of my colleagues in a psychiatric or a general hospital is looking at patients in general, where there may not be really documented increased risk of virus transmission. Even there, the principle should be essentially of non-negotiability, but certainly of some flexibility. What I would come to is the other end of the spectrum. For all of us in general population and even for most hospital or healthcare workers who are not directly dealing with patients, but merely because I am as a medical or a non-medical colleague or an administrative person working in a hospital, I have my anxieties about will I catch infection. There, what has been said umpteen number of times, to repeat one more time, hand hygiene, repeatedly. That's honestly only one solution. There is no other solution than better hand hygiene for oneself and respiratory hygiene for others.
And Dr. Desai, what about the mentally ill patients? Suppose they catch COVID-19? How your institute is coping with such patients? Obviously, if they go to other hospitals, they might not be accepted so easily.
Yes. We are at IBAS and on behalf of the State Mental Health Authority that's located here at IBAS. I happen to be the CEO of the State Mental Health Authority that's responsible not only for regulation but also promotion of positive mental health services. We are doing a number of things. We have had a counseling center for people visiting for quite some time, indeed for over a month and a half. We have now provided web-based Skype counseling for general population or anybody who needs to. We also have, as you are aware, a mobile mental health unit which can go and get people who are mentally ill in home settings or other hospitals. Clearly, the SOP, the standard operating procedure and the ethical legal issues around that will remain, but can be applied flexibly in this period as I have let out. Because as you said, the difficulty will be that people with severe psychiatric symptoms and moderate to severe or moderate or mild COVID symptoms will be actually not accepted anywhere. The generalized COVID facilities will not. The private psychiatry nursing homes, as I am told, would not like to, and that's understandable. The general hospital psychiatry units ought to, but it's unlikely that in the current scenario they will.
So they'll come to EBHAS.
They come to EBHAS, and if we don't house them, or I would think that many other mental health services in the different states must be doing this. But I must flag here, and since you're going to go national on this, in different states and cities, there is a range of activities by our colleagues in psychiatry, private psychiatry groups, psychiatry departments, NGOs, to start telephone helpline services. And so while we will have some national helpline services, what would be very good for our viewers is to try and find out the locally available helpline service with the language and the cultural match. There is any number of examples in every city and town that I already know of. I am sure in next few weeks it's going to get better.
Well, on that note, we'll have to wind up the show. Thank you so much, Dr. Desai. It was indeed a pleasure talking to you. And as Dr. Desai has said, that social distancing refers just to the physical distancing. And you need to implement it in times of COVID-19 and implement it strictly. But that should not stop you from staying emotionally connected. And there are various platforms for it. You can explore your creativity to the maximum, spend some me time with you, and if you feel alone, write about it and express yourself. In case you don't have anyone around you to share your feelings, it will really keep you busy. So that's all for today. We'll meet you again next week with more updates and information. You can send your feedback and suggestions through email. Our email ID is news@vigyanprasar.gov.in. You can also write into us at Vigyan Prasar, 5th floor, Prithvi Bhavan, Lodhi Road, New Delhi, 110003. We will meet you again next week. Till then, stay safe and think scientifically.